Our next storyteller is Shayne Larango.
Thank y'all so much. It's good to be back home. If you don't know, the Texas Storytelling Association has a 40th anniversary book with a collection of stories, and one of my 10-gallon Texas Tales is in there. And that got me to looking back at the one that was published in 1995. And there was a story that was contributed by Finley Stewart, who founded the Storytelling Festival here in Texas. And it was called Lady Ragnall. And it was really interesting because his commentary about including that story said that in 1992, that story was making the rounds. And so I wasn't a part of the festival then, but that really caught my interest because I know this concept about catching a story, stories that want to be told at a certain time. And when you have a group of people telling the same story, there is something that is really wanting to be said. And I'll let you go find that story or find his version of it, but it is about a woman who is cursed to become a monster. And it is about her personal autonomy and her freedom of choice over her own body. Now, the story I'm going to tell you today may be difficult for some people to hear, but I promise you, I understand, because it was very difficult to live through. The calling in of stories, or the name calling, that goes on all the time. And I have been called a lot of things in my day, but usually they go for the obvious, which has to do with my hair. It is the most prominent thing about me, unless you can't see me and you hear me talk. So I have a few favorites over the years that I won't go into, but one that always kind of confused me was Medusa. And I got that a lot, and sorry guys, I have a Texas public school education, so all I knew about Medusa was she was a monster with snakes for hair. And that scared me. I don't like scary things. I don't dive in to be scared. Life is scary enough for me as it is. But something about that caught my interest, and I'd think about it, and I'd go, snakes? I don't know. I mean, you give this hair a good brushing, and that pile of hair that forms looks like a big bunch of daddy long legs resting. I don't know if y'all have ever seen that, but that is frightening enough. But snakes? I don't know. But sometimes I can be a monster. So in I think 2018, 2019, I'm going through the airport, and I'm telling y'all, name calling does not stop when you're kids. I'm going through the airport, and this smarmy man comes up to me and says, you look like Medusa. And I just give him a stare that I hope that would turn him to stone. But it doesn't. And he keeps looking at me. I've been in storytelling then, and I'm thinking it's time to dive into the story to see what this is really all about. And I mean, I've been getting it for years, so I mean, it's time for me to unpack it, right? Well, I do find out that Medusa staring at someone does not turn them to stone. It's when they look upon her. Their gaze upon her. And it's their gaze upon her after she was cursed. And she was cursed by the goddess Athena. And she was cursed by the goddess Athena because she was a priestess or a servant in her temple, and who knows if she was doing this against her will or not either. And Athena was a goddess And Poseidon was a god. And so they were equal, depends on if you're a Greek or Roman, tales. Roman's a little bit more misogynistic and patriarchal and violent, very unforgiving. So Poseidon comes in to the temple or passing by or something. There's a lot of versions of this story. And he sees Medusa, and he has to have her. And he rapes her in the temple of Athena. And Athena gets mad at Medusa. And I realize now it's because she is just angry about this, but Poseidon has power. And Athena can't take it out on the perpetrator. No. But she's going to take it out on someone. And she curses Medusa. And y'all, I saw myself in that story. That was me. I was raped. Wait, that's not what happened. That's the passive voice. That's the passive voice that I grew up learning to speak. That is not what happened to me. Let me get this straight. A man raped me. A man in a position of power raped me. A man in a position of power as a law enforcement officer raped me when I was 16 years old. A 16-year-old girl. And I remember vaguely coming into the house after this was over and trying to wrap my head around what had just happened to me. And I remember thinking, who am I going to tell? The cops? The police? And I remember taking that incident and pushing it as far down in that deep, dark cave of my psyche as I could. And there it stayed for 25 years until an outside catalyst came and brought it back out again. And it did because I found out what I thought was my secret that I was going to keep hidden was a story that was out there making the rounds. And there was a lot of different versions and a lot of different perspectives, but none of them were mine. And when I looked at that incident again, y'all, I felt such rage. Oh, I can't even begin to tell you the fury that rose up in me and the monster that emerged from that 25 years of cursed silence that I had put upon myself because I didn't even want to look upon it. I couldn't. And then I went into shame because I thought my silence had endangered 25 years of opportunities that I know that raper took with other people. So for the next 15 years of therapy, analysis, processing, I get to where I am here. And a very grandmotherly spirit of Medusa comes to me and says, "Girl, you're a woman now. You've found your voice, and you can advocate for us." And as I begin to dig deeper into Medusa's stories, she has so many versions of her too. There's beautiful ones of when she's a mermaid or a sea serpent with golden scales. Now, could she be of seafaring people who came to a new land? She goes by the name of Gorgon. Was that her people? Her surname? Her name? Who was this woman? Oh my goodness. What's absent from everything is her voice. But we do know a little bit more about what happened to Medusa after her curse and after her exile into the caves. Is there was a semi-god, half-god, step-god, Perseus, who came into her life. Now, the story that you hear most prominently is that he beheaded her and used her head as a weapon. But when you dig a little deeper, that's not the hero tale that comes forth. Because Perseus was a boy who was trying to protect his mother from another predator, the king, who wanted her at all costs. And to get Perseus out of the way, he demanded that Perseus go find and behead Medusa because he thought certainly that this would be a fatal quest for Perseus. But the machine of the gods came down and gave Perseus these actual, symbolic, metaphoric tools for him to approach Medusa. And if you do a reading of this story from a different perspective, and when you look at Perseus as the ego, and you understand that Medusa can't be looked upon because nobody can handle her trauma, her complex trauma, and you put that helmet of invisibility on Perseus' head, which quiets or disappears the ego. And then you take that shield that's polished like a mirror and use it for reflection. And you take that sword to behead her. And if you think of it as a story from ancient India, there's Ganesha, who had to be beheaded to embody his divine form. And you understand that when Perseus beheads Medusa, what pops out is a winged mare named Pegasus and a giant with a golden sword named Chrysor. And that death is symbolic of transformation, and you have freedom and you have truth. And it's also told that her blood became medicine. And her monstrous head that was the Aegeus on Athena's shield and that's found on the doors of shelters where women can find their way in. And when you see tattoos of Medusa or a piercing here, a Medusa piercing, you understand symbolically that there's someone who's been through the experience that you've been through, and you find community in something so horrific that causes the freeze response when they look upon it. And if I can leave you with one thing today, or something today, is if you can, listen to the Medusas and to the Poseidons and the predators. The power is shifted. It's time to heal.